Okay, let's dive right into this explainer. Today, we're unpacking one of the most dramatic, cinematic narratives of all time to uncover the deep lessons within the story of the Great Flood. We're going to look closely at the details, the faith, the catastrophe, and that incredible new beginning that followed by examining exactly what the text tells us. This isn't just some simple children's story about a big boat. It's a massive world-altering event, and the specifics are absolutely fascinating. So let's get into it. We actually start our journey in a world lost in total darkness. The earth was no longer filled with worship, it was filled with wickedness. This was a time long before kings ruled mighty kingdoms, long before Moses led Israel through the Red Sea. The world was heavily populated by this point, but generation after generation, humanity had completely turned away from their creator. People ignored God's voice, they openly mocked righteousness, and they lived their daily lives as though God didn't even exist. Every single day, the source tells us people thought only of evil. And this brilliantly illustrates the tragic contrast. On one side, you have God's original creation, which provided humanity with a beautiful earth, abundant food, flowing rivers, really everything they needed to live in love, kindness, and truth. But humanity's fall completely flipped the script. The society they chose to build replaced love with hatred. Kindness became brutal violence. Truth was entirely replaced by lies. And the Creator looked upon the world he had made, and seeing this stark, violent reality, well, his heart was filled with deep sorrow. So the crucial point here is that among millions of people living in this chaotic world, there was one guy who lived differently, and that was Noah. Now, Noah wasn't perfect, but he was incredibly faithful. He walked with the Lord and obeyed him while the rest of the entire world was practically celebrating sin. He lived with his wife and his three sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth, along with their wives. While everyone else laughed at God's commands, Noah listened. And little did they know, this one isolated family was about to become the absolute only hope for the future of humanity. Because of all that violence, God decided to bring judgment upon the world. But he found favor in Noah. So God issues this unbelievable command to build a massive ship based on a highly specific blueprint. I mean, we're not talking about a small fishing boat or a simple raft here. This was an enormous wooden vessel, 3 decks high, built from remarkably strong wood. It had to be covered completely inside and out with pitch just to keep the water out, and it featured exactly 1 door and 1 window. God told Noah a great flood was coming to cover the entire earth, and despite having never seen anything like that, Noah didn't argue. He didn't ask for proof, he simply obeyed. Now, consider the sheer, mind-boggling scale of Noah's obedience. 100. For over 100 years, Noah relentlessly built this ark. Day after day, week after week, year after year, the sound of hammers echoed across the land. Massive beams were raised. And as he worked, crowds gathered to watch, and they relentlessly mocked him. I mean, why would anyone build a ship so far from the sea, they asked. They literally told him he had lost his mind. Noah used this time to warn the people that God's judgment was coming and invited them to turn back. But no one listened. They just laughed louder. Well, Noah kept working, trusting God's word when literally no one else believed. After over a century, the ark was finally complete. Then, something extraordinary happened. The animals began arriving. Lions, elephants, camels, birds of every kind. They didn't just come by chance. God miraculously brought them to Noah. They were instructed to bring 1 pair of every unclean animal and 7 pairs of every clean animal into the ark. Can you imagine? The people in the towns watched this massive migration in absolute amazement. And yet, incredibly, still no one repented. No one else entered. Just Noah, his wife, his 3 sons, and their wives. Once his family and the animals stepped inside, the time for mercy ended in its chillingly final way. It was God himself who closed the door. No human hand could open it. It wasn't Noah shutting his neighbors out. It was the Creator, firmly shutting the door on a world that had completely rejected him. The time to choose had officially passed. The time of judgment had begun. Section 1. The sky is open. The sky grew darker than ever before. Thick clouds rolled in and the wind roared. Out in the world, people were just continuing their daily lives, working in fields, buying and selling in markets, kids playing in the streets. Then a single drop of rain fell. Then another, and suddenly rain poured from the heavens with unstoppable force. But it wasn't just rain. At the exact same time, the fountains of the deep burst open. Water rushed upward from beneath the earth. Rivers overflowed and became raging torrents. Panic spread across the land as people watched their world disappear, rushing toward the hills and some even rushing toward the ark. But remember, that door was already shut. When you look at the timeline of this event, the overwhelming duration is just staggering. First, you have the 100-plus years of Noah patiently building and warning. Then, a terrifying 40 days and 40 nights of unstoppable rain where the fountains burst. The floodwaters swallowed villages, forests, and eventually even the tallest mountains. Every living creature outside the ark perished. And then, for 150 days, water covered the entire earth. It was literally one endless ocean. Inside, Noah's family prayed together and cared for the animals, patiently trusting God's protection while drifting on a chaotic, global sea. In the quiet isolation of the ark, floating on an endless expanse of water, the narrative shifts with a beautiful realization. God remembered Noah. Now, this didn't mean God had somehow forgotten about him, like, oh, right, Noah. In the text, it means God was preparing to act. The turning point of the entire catastrophe hinges on this incredibly powerful moment of divine intervention. The Lord sent a mighty wind across the earth. The fountains beneath the ground finally closed, and the rain stopped. Slowly, day after day, the floodwaters began to grow lower and recede. And finally, grounding this giant vessel, the ark came to rest upon the solid rock of the mountains of Ararat. For the first time in many, many months, there was tangible, physical hope. But Noah didn't just throw open the doors and rush outside. He followed an incredibly patient, step-by-step process of waiting for God's perfect timing. First, after 40 days, he opens the window and releases a raven, which just flies back and forth. Next, he sends out a dove, but it finds nowhere to rest and comes back empty. He waits 7 more days and releases the dove again, and this time it returns carrying a fresh olive leaf in its beak. Life was returning. Finally, 1 week later, he releases the dove once more, and it never returns. The earth was becoming dry. Yet, remarkably, Noah still waited inside for God's explicit command to leave. Section 2. A Covenant of Hope. God finally speaks and tells Noah to come out of the ark with his family. The great door opens, fresh air fills the ark, and the animals spread across the fields. The earth is alive once again, and Noah and his family look around in absolute awe. But rather than immediately building a house to sleep in, or planting crops to secure food, or even throwing some massive celebration, his very first act in this new world is to build an altar. He worships the Lord with a totally thankful heart. His first response is pure gratitude, and this pleasing aroma prompts an extraordinary promise from the Creator. As a sign of this covenant, God places a rainbow in the clouds, an enduring symbol of hope. He tells Noah that never again will he destroy all life with a flood. Whenever it appears, it's meant to remind every single generation of God's mercy, his faithfulness, and his unbreakable promises. It's a brilliant reminder stretching across our skies today that even after severe judgment, God offers grace. Noah's defining legacy is anchored in this powerful statement from Genesis: Noah found favor in the eyes of the Lord. His story proves that true obedience requires immense courage. I mean, he lived by faith when the world violently rejected God. He obeyed when everyone mocked him, and he trusted God's word long, long before he ever saw a single drop of rain. It teaches us that faith often means standing entirely alone against the crowd. So, I leave you with this final thought. The narrative of Noah leaves us with a profound question about trust and resilience. When facing the darkest storms in your own life, how will you find the courage to stand alone and trust the process, even before you see the rain? Thanks for exploring this remarkable explainer with me, and keep seeking the profound lessons hidden in these ancient texts.